Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Chapter 9, Genetics. Let's talk about what we call Mendel's 5-point hypothesis. We just got done talking about the research that Mendel did, where he crossed pea plants with one another to try to figure out how this thing that we call inheritance happens. It's important to remember that we have a basic understanding of how it happens. You've got 2 copies of every gene, one you got from your mom, one you got from your dad. When you go to make your sex cells, you have to put one of those into a sex cell. I can't put both in because then my kids are going to have too much DNA. So I either put the one that I was given by my mother into my sex cell, or I put the one that was given to me by my father into my sex cell. And then your partner has the same choice, and that is your partner either puts the one they received from their mother in their sex cell or the one from their father. And so then you have a combination. And so therefore you have lots of combinations of these possible genes. And remember that we've got 46 chromosomes arranged into 23 pairs. So that means you have lots of combinations. And this completely explains why siblings often have some similar traits, but can also look really different or be really different in other traits. My brother and I sound similarly. We don't look hardly anything alike. And I'm sure you got the same situation. Though my dad had a cousin that everyone thought they were brothers because they inherited a lot of the same genes from the same sources. Grandparents, right? Grandparents pass it on to parents, parents pass it on to their kids, and it just so happened, luck of the dice, that my dad got a lot of the same genes as his cousin did that came from the same original source, grandparents. So Mendel's 5-point hypothesis, and the first is that each trait is determined by a pair of alleles. Allele is a version of a gene, and each trait is governed by a pair of genes, one received from the mother, one received from the father. So in this case, let's talk about flower color. The gene is for flower color, and there are 2 versions of that gene, the purple allele and the white allele. And whether or not you show a purple flower or a white flower is determined by which genes you got. Did you get a purple and have a purple flower? Did you get a purple and a white and have a purple flower? Or did you get a white and a white, and therefore you have a white flower? Each trait is determined by a pair of alleles, one inherited from each parent. Those allele pairs segregate during gamete formation, and the paired condition is restored in the zygote at fertilization. Oh my God, en inglés, por favor. So what that means is the pair, purple flower and white flower, the pair of genes that you have, are segregated during gamete formation. When you make your sex cells, you either put the purple gene into your sex cell or you put the white gene into the sex cell. Segregate during gamete formation, meiosis. The paired condition is then restored in the zygote. Zygote means fertilized egg. At fertilization. The paired condition is restored at conception, when the baby is first made. This egg brings 1 copy of the pair, and the sperm brings a 2nd copy of the pair. And now once the egg and the sperm combine, I have now restored the paired condition. Which allele of a pair goes into which gamete is determined by random chance. This goes back to what we talked about in the previous chapter, and that was we talked about this idea of independent assortment. We said that independent assortment said there was no rhyme or reason as to why this chromosome got put into that sperm cell versus its mate, the other chromosome. There's no reason why this one made it in versus that one. And if you make a whole bunch of different sperm cells, you make a whole bunch of different eggs, you're going to roll the dice each time you come up to each pair of chromosomes as to which one makes it into that egg. And so you're going to have varieties of different sperm cells, varieties of different eggs with different combinations of all of the chromosomes that you have. Which allele of a pair goes into which gamete is determined by random chance. Independent assortment. The chromosomes line up in a different order at mitosis every single time those cells do this process we call meiosis. Every single time they are making those sex cells. When the two alleles are different, one is fully shown and the other one is fully hidden. The one that's fully shown is called the dominant, and the one that's fully hidden is called the recessive. And again, if the two alleles are different, if I have a purple flower gene and a white flower gene, the question is, well, what color should the flower be? Because I've got two different inputs. This one says make it purple, this one says make it white. Well, which one do I choose? Well, there's no choosing. It's that the dominant one is the one that gets shown, and the recessive one gets hidden. Okay? When the two are different, heterozygous, the one that gets shown is the dominant. You only need one copy of the dominant trait to show the dominant trait. Two copies of the dominant trait means you still show the dominant trait. The only way to show the recessive trait is to have two copies of the recessive. Two dominant, I show the dominant. One dominant, I show the dominant. The only way to show the recessive is to have two recessive. Mendel finally determined that his true breeders were homozygous. He finally determined, he figured out why his true breeding plants were true breeding, and that was because they have the same copy of the gene for that trait. Why did all of his purple-flowered true breeders always give him why did all of his purple-flowered true breeders give him purple-flowered children? And that was, as we showed way back here, it was because his true breeders were homozygous dominant. His true breeders were homozygous dominant. They had two of the same gene for that trait. And the two combinations for being homozygous is you're either homozygous dominant or you're homozygous recessive. The purple flowers are homozygous dominant. The white flowers are homozygous recessive in those true breeders. We call what we just finished talking about Mendelian genetics, or sometimes call it classical genetics. It's called classical. Classical music is called classical because it's the old kind of music. Classical genetics is the old kind of genetics. Before we go any deeper into what we call non-Mendelian genetics, please understand the same basic mechanics are still at play. It's just that these have extra conditions. Extra things that Mendel didn't see in his pea plants, but we do see now in the broader life. So our first case of non-Mendelian genetics is something that we call polygene. And you know what poly means? Poly means many. Polygene says that a given trait is not influenced by a single pair of genes. A given trait is influenced by several genes. And a really good example is skin color. A really good example is anything you would use to describe your friend to somebody else. Skin color is polygene, which means the color of your skin is not determined by a single set of genes. Flower color is determined by a single set of genes, which is why there's only two different pea flowers. They're either purple or white. End of story. Just two. Are there just two different kinds of skin color? No. Regardless of what box you check on an application, just because you check the black box does not mean your skin is a certain color. Just because you check the white box does not mean your skin is a certain color. Just because you check the Asian box or the Latino box, it doesn't mean your skin is a certain color. All right? There's a range within every single race. Race doesn't exist. We're all the same. It's the combination of the lights and the darks that you get that determine what color your skin is. You look in any given room and you'll see there's a big range of skin tones from light to dark. And that goes the same thing for pretty much anything you talk about. You talk about what color your friend's eyes are. You talk about what color your friend's hair is. You talk about your friend's height. You talk about your friend's weight. You talk about how bright your friend is. All of those things are all polygene. Every single one of those is polygene. Anything you would use to describe one friend to another is polygene. Lots of genes determine hair color. Lots of genes determine skin color. Lots of genes determine eye color, height, weight, intelligence. And so you end up with a range of traits. polygene, continuous variation.